Hi there, it's Nicole from Mama Elephant, and today I have a designer series project featuring the Tandem Ride stamps from Mama Elephant. This is from their July release, and I've combined those with the Tandem extras to create this really fun card. And today I'm talking all about those little finishing extra touches that you can do at the end of your card making to really make your card pop. I'm going to start by stamping the images from Tandem Ride and Tandem Extras on smooth white cardstock. I'm using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink today, and then I'll color in my images with Copic markers here in a little bit. But first I need to stamp all of those images that I'm going to be using. I'm using the bunny from the Tandem Ride stamp set, and then the little fox and the balloons from the Tandem Extras. I'm going to stamp that balloon several times. I started with just 4 times. That first image didn't stamp very well, so I need to go ahead and stamp that again. However, on the finished card, there's 6 balloons. I felt like once I got the card kind of laid out, that it really needed an additional balloon on each side to hold that bike in the air. And then I'm going to stamp the Tandem bike from Tandem Ride there along the bottom of my paper. Now I'm going to set that aside for just a second and die cut my background. This is some watercolor paper from Tim Holtz, and it is A2 sized. So I'm not necessarily going to be cutting this paper, but I want to give it that decorative edge from the So Fancy Creative Cuts from Mama Elephant. So I've taped it in place so it doesn't shift, and then I'll run it through my Big Shot. This is going to give it that great little crisscross pattern all the way around the edges. So I need to just pop it out now. You can kind of see there those cute little decorative edges. While I work on those images, coloring in those images that I just stamped, I need my background to dry. I'm going to be using some Cracked Pistachio and Twisted Citron Distress inks to color in the majority of my background. You'll see here in a minute. I'm going to leave just a little strip along the top without any color. But I'm going to blend these 2 inks together with the ink blending tool and then spritz it with water. And I'm going to kind of pretty liberally spritz it with water. I love the way the water reacts with the distress inks and really kind of even helps blend the inks even more. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply the ink and get it blended the way I want to. I want it to definitely keep a lighter hand toward the top of this panel. I'm going to go ahead and go back with my Cracked Pistachio now, because you can definitely see that line where those 2 inks meet, and I want that blended out really well before I apply the water. Work on that until you get it the way you want it to look. I can go back with the Twisted Citron now. Just make sure that it's all blended. I didn't apply any new ink to that. Here's the mini mister filled with water. I'm going to spritz that, and you can see that the ink starts reacting right away. And then I'll simply set that aside and let it air dry. You can hit it with a heat tool if you want to, but I prefer air drying, if at all possible. Now I have die cut 2 more rectangles using that same die from the So Fancy Creative Cuts die collection, one from smooth white cardstock and one from vellum. This is what I'm going to use to die cut my cloud borders along the bottom of my card. I want it to look like the bike is being held up in the clouds by 2 groups of balloons. I'm going to grab the greeting I want to use because I want to make sure that balloon on the forefront of my card is going to be wide enough to be able to stamp that greeting. So I've stamped my first border. Go ahead and grab my vellum rectangle now. Take that same Landscape Trio Creative Cuts die. I'm going to just lay that right over it. Make sure that it's going to be taller than the white border, and then run that through. And that's going to give me my 2 borders for the front of the card panel. I'm using the Hero Arts Ombre Mint to Green ink. This is probably my favorite color of ombre ink. And I'm going to ink that up so that the greeting goes from light to dark. And then I'm going to go ahead and set that all aside. Now, enough time had passed. My background was actually dry, so that's why it's all laid out over there to the left. because I had to take a little break in between filming my video here. I'm going to move on to coloring the images that I stamped at the beginning of the video, and I'm going to start with the bike. I'm using some kind of aqua colors, BG13 and blue-green 11 with a little blue-green 18, just here and there to darken up some of the little areas where all those little bike, there's where I'm adding that BG18. Very, very small, not very much. And you can, of course, go back over that and blend it out. I'm using the BG11 to blend one more time and make sure it's blended out well. Now, I skipped away from the bike for a minute while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of the bike and worked on the balloons. These are all going to be kind of what I call sherbet colors. Lots of, I'm tried to stick to a lighter palette and not go too dark or too deep with these. I wanted them to be more pastel. So the first one was kind of a peach color, and then I kind of got a pinky purple here for my second color. And I'm just going to mix and match the colors I'm using for the balloons for the colors to color in the cheeks on the balloons. Color in the balloon. If it blends out too much, you can always go back with a little dark. I'm going to use a little aqua there for the cheeks on this one. And aqua is actually what I used for the last two balloons that I added to the grouping. Go ahead and do a green one using YG21, yellow-green 25, and then a little R30 and R32 for the cheeks. So fun, adds a nice little bit of color. I'm going to go in with Y000 and Y11 now for my final balloon. I definitely had to work to find the right yellow combination because I didn't want it to get too dark or too neon looking. Again, I like that R20 and R32 for the cheeks. A lot of the balloons that aren't that color have that for the cheeks because I like that. And here are those blue-green balloons. I'm going to do both of these in that color combination, but the cheeks are going to be different on each. One will have the peachy pink combination and the other one is going to have the yellow. I'm going to move on to coloring in this cute bunny from the Tandem ride. I want him to look somewhat white or very, very light gray. So I'm using some warm gray markers. This is warm gray 3 and then 0, 0, and 1 are the other two markers I'm using. Don't want to go too much darker than that. And then a little R20 for the insides of the ears and the cheeks. For the insides of the ears and for the cheeks, I colored over those pretty liberally with the warm gray 0, 0 to mute those a little bit and not make them such a harsh pink. And then I'll go back in when I'm done coloring and add some dot detail to give the bunny a little bit of texture. Using the darkest color first, the warm gray 3, and then the warm gray 1. For the fox, I have a color combination I love to color for animals, especially like foxes, but it's really deep and dark. So I chose to use some of the colors that I kind of normally stick with for coloring skin tones to color him in so that he remains more on that pastel palette as well. I'm using E13 and 11, and then I threw in a little E0000 as my lightest color to blend that all out. Now I really had to work to get him blended out. In retrospect, the E00 or E000 may have blended a little bit better, but I love the E0000, that's a lot of zeros to say, for the face area. I liked how light it was, and it got a little dark there, so I went back in with the light and blended it out. I really had to work on him though to get him the way I wanted him to look, but I was very happy with the result because I think he stayed nice and more pastel colored, works better with the bunny, the balloons, the whole design of the card in this color combination for this particular card. Once he is all colored in, again, he has the little pink cheeks and pinks for the insides of his ears, but colored over with some of the lighter colors I used. I'm going to add those little dots to give him some texture. Kind of just stick to those on the upper part of his head and his body. And then I'm going to skip back to the bike and color that in with some of the grays that I used for the rest of the card. I did not go grab any additional colors with the exception of the darker warm grays, the 6 and 8 for the bike wheels themselves. I didn't have any of those colors already out, so I definitely wanted those a little darker. But otherwise, I used the warm grays that I had laid out on my desk already and the yellow 11 for the little light there on the front of the bike. So I'm about finished coloring in everything here on the card. Once I have everything colored in, I can use the coordinating Tandem Ride and Tandem Extra dies to die cut everything out. I tape them in place so I can die cut as many images as I can with one pass of the machine. And then with the balloon, I had to run that through several extra times to die cut all of those balloons I'm using for my card. I do reuse the same piece of Post-it tape many times to get the most use out of them. They stay sticky for a really long time, so I tend to try to keep one piece for as long as possible to get the most out of that roll of Post-it tape. Now, once I had everything die cut, I kind of laid everything out to see how it all was looking and working before I added those finishing touches. That's pretty typical for when I'm designing a card. That way I have a good idea if I need to add anything. In this instance, I did add those 2 additional balloons, or if anything is just really not working. I'm going to go ahead and pop those little inside pieces out of the bike, and I did lay it down and lay out the balloons and make sure that I had left enough room from the balloons to the top of the card so that they would all fit. Once that I had established that, I can add those finishing touches. This is those things that I was talking about that really make the card shine. I'm taking a black glazed pen and adding detail to all the eyes and the noses on the large critters. It makes a huge difference. You can see how much deeper and darker they are. Then I'm going to take a white gel pen and add some little white dots to the cheeks on the balloon. Again, just a fun little touch that adds a cute little whimsical look. I'm going to take the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen now, and for that little bit of glimmer and glitter that you see on the balloons, this is how I achieved that. Plus I added it to the light on the bike. You want to make sure that your pen that you used for the eyes and the cheeks is dry first. And then I'm going to take that white pen and add the catch lights in those big eyes. And for those big eyes, that makes a really huge difference. But you want to make sure the black pen is dry first before you add the white. Finally, I am going to take the glossy accents and I'm going to cover all of my balloons. This is going to give them that nice glossy glazed look, almost like an enamel sticker. Even though it gives it a slightly raised look, it's not going to add a ton of dimension. So along with the balloons, I'm going to, on the aqua parts of this bike, I am going to trace those with my glossy accents as well and give my bike a little bit of that glossy look. It's really going to tie in nicely with the rest of the card. Now that has to sit and dry for a good long while. So go do something else, finish up some other things you have going on, and then come back to it. I would say at least an hour. You really want it to be good and dry before you try to put everything together. So I attached the bike to my card. I used a little liquid adhesive for that with all the delicate little areas. And then I'm using some larger glue dots for the critters. And then a large glue dot on my balloons. For the balloon strings, I'm going to leave those without any adhesive just for the moment while I work with them. And then I can add some liquid adhesive underneath them in a little bit to make sure they're secure. And I'm hiding some of those balloon strings back behind critters and the bike and things. Just snip off this end because it's a little long. Go ahead and work on the other side. I want it to look like it's kind of tied to the bike and help holding it up and transporting it in the air. Move that one a little bit. I moved them around quite a bit trying to get them exactly where I wanted them to go. Just snip the end of that one, tuck it underneath the bike. And I liked the yellow balloon hanging off the edge here a little bit. One final thing, my last tip for finishing up a card is using some confetti. That can be either confetti pieces like I'm using here, which were die cut with the Mama Elephant confetti Creative Cuts die, sequins, enamel dots, other little gemstones, things like that. They add a nice little finishing touch. I am using confetti that I had die cut from some silver glitter paper a while back, and I just save it in little containers and can use it for many other projects because it cuts a whole bunch at one time. I kind of got a glob of glue there, so I had to move it a bit. I'm using a little nozzle on my Ranger Matte Medium that helps apply a smaller bit of glue, and then the quick stick tool to easily place all these little glitter confetti pieces. Once that is all the confetti's in place, I can trim off that excess balloon, attach this panel to a white card base, and that will finish up my card. Thanks for watching this designer series project featuring the Mama Elephant Tandem Ride stamp set. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Thanks for watching.